Hey everyone, Captain Chemo here for another video tutorial. And in this video tutorial I'm going to show you how I pick and choose a single exposure HDR image for landscape. And this is the photo here that we're going to be using. Now I shot this photo in HDR, so I took 3 exposures, and this one is the evenly exposed image. This one is the underexposed image, and this one here is the overexposed image. Now I chose to do single exposure HDR here because this photo here is perfect. It doesn't have anything that's blown out or any deep shadows. So if I did HDR, it would actually ruin the photo, because in here you can see some movement. It was pretty windy day, so you can see some movement in the trees, and the underexposed image really doesn't do anything for the photo, so we're not going to be using it. The overexposed image is just way too blown out, so it's really not going to help for HDR. So I decided to just do a single exposure HDR for this particular image using the raw file that I shot for this particular photo. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this single exposure raw file into Photomatix, and we're going to tone map the image. And once we tone map the image, I'm going to take it into Photoshop, and we're going to use a couple of Topaz plugins to make it look even more dramatic. So this is the final image that we're going to try to achieve. And let's show you the original. So this was the original image, and then this will be the final image that we're gonna get. I'm gonna try to add a little more color to it, but I'm not trying to go too crazy like in some HDR photos. So I'm just gonna try to keep it at a minimal but still get a really dramatic look. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna go ahead and take this photo, or take this photo. I'm going to go into Photomatix, and we'll start tone mapping the image. Okay, so right now I have our photo open in Photomatix, and I have the tone mapping window open. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and play with the presets. Normally what I do with a single exposure image is I will start with the photographic preset, and this is using the method tone compressor, and this will produce a lot nicer realistic pixels in the photo versus a more aggressive look with the detail enhancer. Normally I use tone compressor, but in this particular photo I'm actually going to use detail enhancer. So we'll start with the default here, and I'm going to try to play with it. The only reason I'm doing detail enhancers is I'm trying to maybe bring out the detail and some of the clouds and stuff like that, and bring out the colors and stuff, and make it look a lot more nice versus photographic, which I can't really do with photographic. It has its limitations, but it also produces a more photorealistic image. But for this particular photo, I'm just going to go ahead and do the detail enhancer. So we're going to go ahead and get started with that. I'm going to click on the default, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the strength down here, and strength will make the image look more realistic with detail enhancer. And I'm going to just boost up the color saturation to about an 80, and that will bring up our colors. With luminosity, I am going to want to play around with it to see where I like it. And I think I like the luminosity down a little bit here, so we'll leave it there for now. And detail contrast, I'll play around with that also and see where I like that. And I like it right about there, so we'll move to the next setting here, and this is light adjustment. And in light adjustment for this particular photo, I'm going to use the slider versus just the buttons. If you click on lighting effect, you'll get 5 buttons. I'm not going to want that because this is really aggressive on the pixels, so I'm going to leave that alone. I'm just going to check that off, and I'm just going to use the sliders. For a more aggressive look, I'll want to go to the left, or for a more realistic look, I'll want to go to the right. But I actually use this detail enhancer so I can get it just a little more aggressive, so I'm just going to pull it to the left here. Maybe leave it right about there, -6. It looks good. So next I am going to go down here, and we're going to play around with the more options tab, and we're just going to go ahead and maybe bring the white point up a little here, and then bring up the black point. And then play with the gamma until we kind of get a good feeling for where actually that looks good, so we'll leave it right there. I'm going to go next to the temperature, and I actually want this a little cooler versus a little warmer. This will be warmer, and I don't like those tones, so I'm gonna go more towards the cool side. So it looks good there, and then next I'm gonna go down, and micro smoothing will give you a more aggressive look if you keep it to the right or the left. And if you want to smooth out the pixels in the photo, you can move it to the right, and it will actually brighten up the image a little bit too. For this photo, we're gonna actually bring it up. So let's go ahead and leave it up 30, up all the way. And I'm not gonna move or play around with saturation highlights or saturation shadows. It's really not gonna do anything, so we'll just leave it alone. Shadow smoothness, I might want to bring that up a little bit, and it doesn't really do anything. That's because you actually have to move smooth highlights a little, just to kind of give it a, see, you notice that little bit of effect just because I moved it. So we'll move the smooth highlights a little bit, and then we'll play around with the shadow smoothness to kind of get it at a spot there. I'm liking it right around there, so we'll leave it at that, and I believe that's it for all the presets. So it looks good now, so we're gonna go ahead and process the photo, and then we're gonna take it into Photoshop, and I'm gonna show you what I do there using Topaz. So let me show you the this is the original HDR, or the original exposure without the tone mapping, and here is the tone mapped image in Photomatix. So let's go ahead and process this, and then we'll take it into Photoshop, and I'll show you what I do in Photoshop using Topaz plugins. Okay, so here is our tone map image from Photomatix, and I am going to start processing it right now. The first thing I am going to do with this particular photo is I'm going to duplicate the layer. So I'm going to hit Control J, Command J on a Mac. I'm going to duplicate the layer here, and then I'm going to use a Topaz filter. I'm going to go ahead and use Topaz Denoise. Now I'm using Topaz Denoise first because I like to remove the noise before I do anything else. Okay, so here we have our photo in Topaz Denoise, and I'm just going to use the JPEG Strongest preset here. Click on that and hit OK, and we're just going to go ahead and process it just like that. Alright, so now that I have Topaz Denoise used on the photo, I'm going to go ahead and use Topaz Adjust on this photo, and this will add a little bit more contrast to the image. And I'm going to start with a preset in Topaz Adjust here. I'm going to go into Classic Collection, and I am actually going to use the Brilliant Cold, Brilliant Cold preset. I'm going to start from there, and then I'm going to go ahead and just adjust some of the settings here. The adaptive exposure, I'm going to probably pull this up a little bit just to give it some more contrast, and that looks good. And then I'm going to play around the contrast and see if I want it more to the left or more to the right. The right will give me a lot of contrast, but the left will actually give me more color and more depth. So I'm going to actually bring it to the left side here, and that looks good. So I'm going to close that and go into detail and maybe boost the detail just a little, not a lot, because too much can be a little overbearing for Topaz. So I like to add just a little detail in Topaz Adjust. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and close that out and go into the color and give the color boost, just a little boost in color here using saturation boost. I'm just going to a tad bit of a color boost there. So that looks good, and close that out. And then we're going to go ahead and close out global adjustments altogether and go into finishing touches. And I'm going to go into warm, where I'm actually going to bring the temperature more towards the cool end. So I'm going to go ahead and go towards the cool end here, and that looks good. I don't really want it warm here. It doesn't look nice for this photo, so I'm going to keep it cool, and that looks good. I'm going to close that, and the last thing I'm going to do is the vignette. I'm going to give it a little bit of a vignette to kind of draw the eye towards the center of the photo here and not out of the photo. So let me see this. This is before, and then this is after. I'll play around the transition to see what looks nicer. Okay, so that looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and close that, and I'm done here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the OK. So let's go ahead and I'll show you the before, and then this is the after real fast. So it got a lot more dramatic colors and detail. So it looks really rich. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Okay, so here we have our photo that has been applied with Topaz Adjust. And I am going to do one last thing to the image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate that layer there that was affected by Topaz Adjust. I'm going to duplicate it. It's going to create a new layer for me. I duplicate the layer using Control J, Command J on a Mac. And what we're going to do is we're going to go into Filters, and I'm going to go ahead and use Topaz Lens Effect. And for a lot of you who follow me and my work, I like using Lens Effect to produce an Orton effect. Okay, so I have the Lens Effect plugin open, and I'm just going to use the Bokeh SLR lens, and I'm going to click on the Canon 135 f2 and hit OK. And once I do that, I change the transparency mode here. I'll change it real fast to soft light, and it gives it a very dreamy look, but I don't want this image to be this intense, although it does look nice. It's really up to you. And I'll bring down the transparency on it, and maybe around 30%. Usually I like it around 30-40%, and it gives it a very dreamy look to the image. So let's take a quick look at what we just did here. Let's go back to the here's the original photo here. Very soft, very bland, you know, a lot of colors. And then here is the final image that we did. A lot of colors there. It's not too overboard, not too crazy. And then I'll just go ahead. This was the tone mapped image in Photomatix. So then we went ahead and did the Topaz, and then we did the Orton effect, and we got a very artistic, very creative photo. And that's gonna be it for this tutorial. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, and if you want to learn more about the software that I use or other techniques that I do, go ahead and visit CaptainKimo.com. I have a bunch of other videos and daily photos that I post every day. Until next time, this is Captain Kimo signing out.